This week I finished Western Lane by Chetna Maroo. Chetna Maroo lives in London. Her stories have been published in the Paris Review, the Stinging Fly, and the Dublin Review. She was a recipient of the Paris Review's 2022 Plimpton Prize for Fiction. Western Lane was shortlisted for the 2023 Booker Prize and longlisted for the 2024 Women's Prize for Fiction. It came out in 2023. So this is one that I started talking about on the podcast a couple of months ago. I remember I picked it up in one of the bookshops that I've visited in my many bookshop visitations. I visited this one, I visited that shop and I got this book because I heard... I forget who. I mean, it was you, I think, that told me about it originally.
Yeah, I was looking at sports books one time.
Yeah, I've seen it online somewhere as well, and I think the cover is great.
Yeah,
like
awesome.
The little squash ball imprints and the girls running around. It's awesome. And it just ticks so many of my boxes. It's like about sports, it's literary fiction, it's short, it's like 150 pages.
Oh my God.
I thought it sounded cool. So I gave it a shot. And so I started it a while ago, and then I put it down, and then I read another big chunk of it a couple weeks ago, and then I put it down. And then I read another, 40% of it or something at the passport office.
Right. It was the book. I was wondering if that's what you were reading.
Yeah, and I was like, all right, let's try and finish this thing. And then I came home and finished it. So it was fantastic. So,
nice.
Okay, let's talk about what it's about first. It's about... her name is Gopi. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but I think Gopi. And she's 11 years old, and her mother has passed away. Living in her house is her dad, who's now in charge of them, and the 3 daughters. And she is the youngest daughter. And so the dad a little bit doesn't know what to do. Like, their mom just died. He's now the sole caregiver of these 3 daughters. He's lost, and he's grieving.
Yeah.
So he's like, we're gonna get really into squash. This is what we're gonna do. We're gonna all train a lot, and we're gonna be very intense, and basically he's just we're gonna train so much you can't even think about your grief.
Right, yeah.
Kind of a situation.
Yeah.
Which I respect a little bit as a concept. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, do something. Channel it. Channel something.
We're going to channel the grief into sport as opposed to some other way that it could come out. I think is interesting.
Yeah.
And so he starts doing that, and kind of what happens is that she really rises above her 2 sisters. They like squash, but they don't love squash, where she starts to really love it and have a super an aptitude for it. She's really locked into it. And so that's what the book's about. And then basically partway through there's a tournament that comes up, and she's going to aim to go to this tournament.
Yeah.
Her first ever tournament. So I read the book, and I guess I literally, I didn't have the copy with me while I was in the passport office, as you all know. So I was just reading it on my phone. And so I didn't remember that she was 11. And the whole time that I was reading this, I was like, how old is she? At times I was I think she's 12. At times I was she's gotta be 13, 14.
Yeah.
And then at times I thought she might be 15 or 16. So.
Oh my God.
I think that was interesting. I don't know if that was on purpose or not. I think maybe the writing was better than what you would what an 11-year-old could do.
Oh, okay.
So, if you know what I mean, and it's not in the first person. I mean, it is in the first person, but it's remembering. She's I remember that this happened, and I remember that this
could
happened.
Be her reflecting from an older age.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that she must be slightly older, remembering back on this time, but it didn't feel very childish. That's just a random aside. It was really good. I see why it was nominated for stuff, because it felt really poignant. I've got to say, this has got to be one of the saddest books I've read in a really long time. It's just all of these people trying to hold it together.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, that's
and
scary.
There's not really any point in the novel where people are screaming each other. There's not really a point where people are crying like crazy. There's not really a point where people are doing ridiculous things or over-the-top things where you're just I get that they're grieving, but this is a little over the top, Mr. Author, sir, or whatever, right? No, it's just people barely holding on, and it's fascinating because that's kind of that's like one of the horrifying things about grief, is that the next day you just wake up and your life is still your life, but in other ways, your life is not your life at all. Mm-hmm. And that's that horrifying mirror world that you're living in, and that you just have to keep existing in. I think that's what she did so well. Like, you're like, this is not the same, but it's weirdly the same as before her mom died. It was very scary and so sad. Oh my God.
Sounds really good though.
It was so good, and it was really well written. There was multiple sentences where I was like, damn, that was gorgeous. Like, that was gorgeous, or that was beautiful, that was really great. And I was reading about the author, Chetna Maroo. She was an accountant for years.
Amazing.
And then now she's an author, which I think is just really cool. And I kind of feel like, in a way, she feels like a normal person that wrote an amazing book. Yeah. Like, I feel like that's why she was able to really get in touch with these characters so well. Mm-hmm. Because, I don't know, she just, it was really cool. And also, it's about, like, this family that has a very different culture than mine. It's set in England. It's a British, I think it's British? Well, the author lives in London. I think, it's a UK book for sure. But they're also culturally very different from my culture. So it was cool to get to read about that and their food and the, like, other practices that they do. So that was really neat. So it was beautiful. It was such a great book. I think I'm hovering at, like, around a 4-ish kind of a stars, because I think that it was excellent, and I don't usually bring up the star rating, but I just feel like it is useful right in this context. It felt like such a great book. I can't really fault it on anything. Like, there was nothing that I thought went wrong. I thought it was beautiful. It was perfect. For what it was perfect. But for some reason, I just didn't feel like I got to the end of it, and I didn't feel like really recommending it to people. Like, I'm not, like, I will, in certain, if people
but it wasn't like a spread it to the, to the people. Yeah. Like, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why I'm, like, in that 4 range. And it didn't, like, resonate with me specifically in a way where I'm just like, wow, this hit me at the right time. Yeah. Kind of, I don't know. So, I'm glad I read it, though. It was a really cool book, and it was also really cool to read about squash.
Yeah, that's a new one. I have not read about that.
I haven't read about that either, so that was neat.